All right. Without further ado, let's bring him in. Brian Beatty, Q92 Sports, joining us here on the Sam Bourquin Show, 1310 WDPN, and all across all of our social media platforms. B. Beatty, good afternoon. Hey, you don't have navy blue on today. What's going on?
No, I got the Cardinal red on. I got the Schnellberger shirt on today. So been doing yard work, trying to get this pool open. So got a nice day finally. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll have you know, I will continue to live vicariously through you, because I've been trying to get a pool at my house since we built it, and I've been shut out at every turn. It's not that hard of a deal, is it, or is it? Be honest.
Yeah, it's a pain.
Okay.
There's no doubt. It's a pain. It's always something. It took me a while to get the heater. Because if you don't have a heater up here, there's no reason to have a pool. It took me a minute to get that going. So at least everything's running. That's always the cross of the fingers when you first open it up. So
all right. Well, I really do want a pool. I've had to pay for memberships at various pools over the last 20-25 years, and I thought, once we get a house and we build a house, we're going to get a pool. No pool. No pool. I have to go indoors at the Y. I don't want to swim indoors, Brian, in the summer. I don't want to do that.
No, I understand completely there.
I like this.
So
all right, so holy smokes, what is going on? We've got more conference realignment teams leaving, coming and going. Today it was announced that 7 schools from the IVC are leaving. And among those in our semi-close to area here, East Canton, Malvern, Tuskegee, Conotton Valley. What obviously this wasn't a surprise, I don't think, but what's the fallout going to be here?
No, I think everything. I think all these schools are in the portal right now. It feels like it's a whole new way of. I don't know how the schools are actually thinking. I'm kind of involved with a little bit, but it's just trying to find the right fit for all your sports. And there's so many sports anymore. It's really hard. Football one time drove all this. It seemed like,
right.
But with the amount of playoff spots you can get in football now, that's not as a big deal. You want to keep some of your independence and things that way. It's just really starting to, size-wise, competitiveness with all the sports, having all the sports available for you. I know that was, you look at down to Berlin Highland, they don't have football and, such. So, they were out of their league. So it's just kind of a wish-wash, and it's really hard to figure it all out until it all becomes finalized.
It's just it's going on all over the place, and there's been a lot of activity here lately. I know you're aware that there's still some meetings that are being held or to be held with some other schools and leagues to get things finalized, not only for 26, but 27, 28, 29, 30, and moving forward. What do you touched on it a little bit. What do you think the biggest reason is for all this moving around here lately? Is it pretty much financially driven? Is it trying to make it, I don't want to say easier, that's not the right word, maybe more beneficial for some schools to play teams closer to their size, to get more wins, to get more excitement, other intangibles? What's the biggest reason here, do you think?
I just think it started off a little bit of the competitive side. We take the EBC for in consideration. Minerva is looking to get out. They've just struggled in all sports, so that they kind of went their own way and started that new Senate League, and all of a sudden it's just dominoes started falling just across the board. And it's just, I don't know, I think a lot of schools are stuck. Louisville, here at Louisville, we've been independent for a while, looking to get into the AAC and things of that sort, but it's just kind of really the only really have any stability in the state, honestly, when you look, is the Federal League. And it's just really outside that, it just seems like as soon as the Senate League took off, when they started the new Senate League, dominoes just start falling, and I would have to, I'd like to say it was distance and travel, but I look at Marlington, they don't have anything close. Their closest is going to be Minerva, and from there it's Carrollton and down south of that. So I just think it was more of a competitive, advantage. And from there, it just seems like just all these dominoes are falling. I know when you get up towards the Trumbull County, Mahoning Valley, a lot of the smaller schools just couldn't compete. So, some of them had, 8-man football they play. So they had some teams that way were looking to get conferences. So it just kind of, it just all these dominoes started falling. And, you may have one or two big schools in these districts districts that are kind of stuck to go anywhere because they're just too big and no one wants to play them. So it's a strange situation for sure.
It most certainly is. Brian Beatty is our guest. Q92 Sports will be my partner in the broadcast booth coming up here this year for high school football on Q92, and we are really looking forward to that. Do you see this kind of activity continuing with conferences and leagues? As we talked about the Stark County area a little bit to the east, or the Youngstown Mahoning area. We know there's a lot going on with like the old Metro teams and the like. And Brian, I said on the show earlier today, if somebody came in here and says we're going to give you a quiz, and the quiz is going to be, I'm going to give you a team, you have to tell me what conference they're in, I would flunk it.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah. No, it's up even, you go into the Portage County area, Waterloo, Rootstown, Crestwood are all going to form the GPAC here in 27-28. I feel like by the 27-28 season, we're going to have stability finally. I think that's when everyone's going to be kind of on board, and hopefully they stick to where they're at. Because there are some good sizes, good matchups. Some of the leagues are, strong, but then, you look at the Metro and they're losing some and they want to try to bring new schools in, but, all their schools got hit pretty hard with the levies not going through. And, and there's some schools in that league now aren't going to have JV or middle school sports. So, that comes a consideration when you're thinking about joining a conference in a league. So, yeah, my hope is by 27-28, we can kind of have everything put together, but these next school year, it's just going to be, everyone's kind of up in shambles where they're going to be.
Yeah, that school you speak of, this is Streetsboro. That's no JV, no middle school sports. We had a conversation the other day, you and I, about it seems like there seems to be a trend now where schools are going away from having full-time athletic directors. Do you think this will continue, and what's the reasoning behind that, do you think, in some of the districts that have kind of moved forward with that?
I think it just comes down to, financial, then we could have a long drawn out section and a debate on that. But, the money right now through the state's really hitting these public schools hard. So they're looking to cut. And, if they can have an athletic director be a teacher for a few mods and, stipend them as an athletic director, that helps, save a little bit of the money that way. You don't have an extra administrator. In the future, I see counties maybe having countywide athletic directors. Maybe some of these leagues have an athletic director that kind of takes care of the scheduling stuff, and just gives less burden and financial issues for the school having to have a full-time athletic director. But some the bigger schools are going to continue, but that's not even here in the state of Ohio. I just was reading an article, Grove City High School over in PA, which is one of the bigger high schools, is gotten rid of the athletic director position also. So yeah, it's something where it's a challenge for public schools, and everything right now, and that's a way maybe they can save a few dollars.
Brian Beatty is our guest, Q92 Sports. I know we also talked about, I think you'd been checking out a couple of these showcases that have been around the area at certain schools with coaches from colleges coming in, getting to watch guys run and kick and pass and throw and just things like that. This seems to be an uptick in this the last couple of years, and looks like this is a pretty good idea. It's a win-win for the kids, the parents, and the colleges and the high schools. Take us behind the curtain a little bit, if you will, and how much further do you think this will go, and interest will be generated, and so forth, so on?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, to get your kids together. I know we were talking Wednesday afternoon. May 15th is kind of the start football now, high school football in the state of Ohio. They got their helmets on, they're ready to go. So this is an opportunity to get your kids together, but at the same time, have them in a controlled environment. They don't have to pay the money to go to a camp. They can get their test scores, which is like your 40, your shuttle run, your vertical jump, and, everything that way. So then when colleges are, wanting those numbers, they're getting the official numbers. They've been registered and they're legit. They're just not putting it on their X feed saying, I run a 4.5, but they're really running a 5.2. So, but in another way, it's every school. Your big time schools. Your Ohio States. Your Michigans and stuff, they're not going to use this as much. It's more for the Division II, smaller Division I type schools, your Division IIIs, and kids nowadays. It's a whole. I have a daughter going through the recruiting process, and it's a whole different ball game than when I was going through it, and then even when I was coaching. It's just these colleges are going to take a 21, 22-year-old adult male or female, that put on their roster before they take an 18-year-old kid. So these kids are going to have to start knowing that, they go Division III, II, JUCO, and AIA is not a bad way to get noticed. And we got to keep, stressing it's the education is the major thing. You're going to school. So you really want to, stress that. But, it gives these kids an opportunity to see, where they need to be, where they're at, and start comparing. So yeah, I to get back to the question, I guess I really think this is a great, these showcases, being able to see these kids and the coaches and perform in front of them is great opportunities.
Good stuff. Well, hopefully that'll keep on going and moving in a positive direction. Brian, we always appreciate your time, especially on a Friday afternoon. Get that pool finished up. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you here real soon. Okay.
Perfect. I'll send you a pool pass over.
Right. Thank you. Pool pass. I'll pay the fee. I don't care what it is.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks,
There
Sam.
you bet. Brian Beatty, Q92 Sports, hanging out with us here on the Sam Bourquin Show.